Sunday on ESPN Radio. Jimmy Butler, Pau Gasol, and the Bulls head to L.A. to face Chris Paul and the Clippers.
Throws it down with two hands.
Coverage begins Sunday at 2:30 Eastern on ABC and on ESPN Radio.
Happy Friday, everybody. Come watch First Take live in San Francisco for Super Bowl 50. The location is Fort Mason Center. We'll be there Wednesday, February 3rd through Friday, February 5th, along with special guests like Vince Vaughn and Brandon Marshall, plus daily giveaways. Doors open 6 a.m. local. Showtime is 7 a.m. Set your alarms, and we hope to see you there. But coming up right now on the First Take pod, should Peyton Manning and the Broncos be getting more Super Bowl respect? And which player turned in the top Super Bowl performance of all time? Let's get it started. TGIF, happy Friday. Oh, whatever. Skip doesn't care what day it is, Stephen A. I don't know if you can see him shaking his head. Good morning, everybody. Yours truly, Skip Bayless.
Oh, thank you, Molly.
Molly Caramere on the East Coast in Bristol.
He's so happy she has a weekend off.
Whatever.
Oh, way to go.
I need a break from him, Stephen A. Can you blame me? Stephen A's
No,
all
I
over the
cannot
place.
blame you. No, I cannot blame you. How y'all doing?
West Coast.
Yeah, I
I'm
cannot
kidding.
blame you. You get to be in L.A. today while we're stuck in little old Bristol, little old cold Bristol, Connecticut.
Well,
what a life
whine-
you have. What a job you have.
Before you whine a little bit too much, keep in mind that before I'm here, I actually have to get here. And imagine what that is like.
I'm so sorry for you. I just feel for you, and I'm going to take it easy on you because you had such a long night and a rough trip to L.A.
This is actually one of those days where I might actually need you to take it a little bit easy on me. I mean, usually I'm beating you down, so I don't blame you if you don't do that, if you decide not to, but it is what it is.
Okay.
It is what it is.
Skip's on one today.
Yeah, right.
All right, let's work, gentlemen. Ryan Clark will also be with us later in show. So the line in Vegas has been a fluid situation for the Carolina-Denver game. By Wednesday evening, the early action had moved the consensus line at Vegas Sportsbook to 5.5, up a point from most of the posted opening numbers. Now, of course, Carolina being favored. William Hill, U.S., telling ESPN the public is clearly enamored with the supposed mismatch of Cam Newton over Peyton Manning. Nearly every ticket is on Carolina, and it doesn't show any signs of slowing up. The head odds makers at the Westgate Las Vegas Superbook said that the Carolina money won't be slowing down in the coming week. Carolina favored by 5.5 to win the championship. Skip, what do you make of all this?
Stephen A. Smith, the truth is, you might have to take it easy on me today because I'm telling you, from my heart, I am depressed about this Super Bowl.
Why?
Because for me, the bottom has fallen out of this Super Bowl, and it did when the Patriots and Tom Brady barely fell short last Sunday at Denver. Because to me, I'm with the bettors here. I think they're on the right track this time. I do think that Carolina will win this game fairly easily. And I do have Carolina on my mind, and I'm going to have Carolina on my mind for 2 long weeks because I don't have much of Denver on my mind. I'm sorry, but I just don't. And to me, this Super Bowl, let me get this off my chest. I do love me some Tom Brady, but I think I'm being objective when I say this Super Bowl would have been so much more captivating for 2 long weeks building up to it, so much more electrifying to watch, and certainly so much more debatable if it had been Tom Brady versus Cam Newton. Because we all know Tom Brady has got some edge to him. He was convicted in the court of public opinion as the cheater who lied about deflating the footballs. And we all know that Tom Brady is capable of going flat-out psycho Tom during games and running around like a crazy man as he celebrates his touchdowns. And that means that for some people, Tom Brady can be, in my humble opinion, at least as quote-unquote hateable as Cam Newton can be. And I still assert that Cam Newton's more beloved than some people think. But that would be the debate for 2 long weeks. Boy, would I be into that. I think the world would be into that. And I'm not really into this because I said last week, I've got my everybody says syndrome. And it was the reason I was trying to convince myself to pick Denver over on my Patriots 1 week ago, right now, sitting in this seat. Because when everybody says, as they are now, that one team is going to win, my history tells me it's wise to bet on the other team until now. Everybody said last week that New England would have its way at Denver. No contest. And I was trying to say, time out Tom Brady has no running game to keep a pass rush honest, very little offensive line to protect him, and he's in Denver, thanks to Bill Belichick, up against the #1 defense that led the NFL in sacks. And I still say that last week in Denver, minus home field advantage thanks to Bill Belichick, that the Broncos' MVP was the loud crowd because Tom Brady couldn't vary his snap count. They just had to snap it on rhythm. And as we all know, and I keep saying, DeMarcus Ware, Von Miller, on your mark, get set, go, rush to the quarterback. And we know what happened there. He almost pulled it out anyway. But in this case, I'm sorry, I can't make any case for Denver on a neutral field because I must tell you, and maybe you're like me, I'm still a little gun shy over what happened 2 years ago because you and I agreed 2 years ago this week that Denver would beat Seattle. Peyton Manning would beat young Russell Wilson in his first Super Bowl. And Denver went into that game a 2.5-point favorite. And you know the rest of the story. I think it was the most embarrassing beatdown in Super Bowl history under the circumstance of a favorite, 2.5-point favorite. And it ended almost before it began. 12 seconds in, remember, Peyton wasn't ready for the snap, over his shoulder, back into the end zone, safety. And the sky fell on Peyton and company 43-8. So I think a lot of bettors can't get that out of their mind, and I can't either, because I'm going to say it again. It feels like the year of Cam. It feels like the year of the Panthers. We just watched them destroy Seattle, at least for a half, 31-0, with 2 more takeaways to go with their 39 that led by far through the regular season. Then we saw them flat out destroy Arizona with 7 more takeaways to pile on to their league-leading total. And I'm saying they're going to do the same thing to Denver. It just feels like they're on a Super Bowl roll, and they really have been from start to finish. So it feels like I don't know, I'm being conservative. It feels like a 14-point game to me at the best. So I'm not very excited about it, and I'm sorry for that, but that's the truth. Your thoughts?
All valid points. Can't refute anything that you just said because this was why I wanted New England. Because I wanted Brady versus Cam. So I get exactly where you're coming from, but what I'm not going to do is poo-poo Super Bowl 50 and depress everybody to the point where you're just looking for something. You've got a plan B, an alternative plan. I'm going to do everything that I can to encourage folks to think that this Super Bowl can be competitive, although I can tell you the Carolina Panthers firmly believe they're going to handle their business. They're an extremely confident bunch. We'll see what happens. Here's the deal, Skip. When you look at it from the perspective that you broke down, that's absolutely correct. When you take into account the fact that in terms of touchdown to turnover ratios, when you think about the fact that Denver's offense, was like 4th in the league in turnovers, only 3 teams committed more turnovers, you got to take that into consideration as well. And as opportunistic as Carolina's defense is, that's just not a good sign for the Denver Broncos because Carolina defense is no joke. They really question whether or not Peyton Manning can throw the football. As a result, they expect to get all up in him. They expect to apply pressure, and we know what that could end up looking like because we saw it 2 years ago. I think this match is definitely reminiscent, or could be reminiscent, of what we saw 2 years ago when Seattle drubbed them 43-8. The Legion of Boom walked up in there. They didn't even have to blitz to apply pressure to Peyton Manning. Also remember that Denver started the game off snapping the ball over Peyton Manning's head. Seattle instantly got a safety, and from there it was just lights out. They were all over Denver. It was never really a matchup to speak of, even though Demaryius Thomas had 13 receptions that game. There were a lot of meaningless catches because Seattle was really running away with it. Plus, there was a pick six of Peyton Manning as well. You got to look at all of those things and ask yourself, okay, what's going to happen this time? Yes, Peyton Manning had 9 touchdowns, 17 interceptions in a regular season, had a QBR of 44. There was nothing impressive about that at all. The flip side to it, however, Skip, in his last 3 starts, he hasn't turned over the ball at all. He hasn't had any interceptions whatsoever. And if you can keep the turnovers down, okay, then you can turn this into a defensive contest. If that happens, here's the question. Do you believe Denver's defense can at least contain Carolina to some degree where Carolina doesn't run away with it? Because the interesting component in all of this, Skip, is what if this game gets into the 4th quarter and it's relatively tight? Because the defenses dominate the game. Now we're talking about the youthful exuberance of a Cam Newton-led offense. against an experienced, savvy veteran like Peyton Manning, who's been to this rodeo 3 previous times. And that's where it gets interesting. See, Russell Wilson never really got tested in his first Super Bowl because Seattle ran them out of the building, okay? That's what happened. The defense literally intimidated Denver's offense to the point where you had guys that, and I said this if you remember at that time, they were straight up punked. They were scared to go over the middle. They were scared to do anything. They didn't have Emmanuel Sanders that particular Super Bowl, but they did have Demaryius Thomas, okay? They had Eric Decker as the second wide out. But when you look at it now, you've got Sanders, you've got Demaryius Thomas, you got Owen Daniels, you've got C.J. Anderson and Ronnie Hillman capable of running the football effectively. You just got to ask yourself, can the game be close come fourth quarter? And if that answer is yes, then it changes everything because now palms get sweaty. You understand? And things get a little bit different. That's the hope that I'm holding out for, because if there's one thing I despise in championship matchups, it's a blowout. As far as I'm concerned, it's supposed to be the best against the best. Don't have me sitting down to watch this Super Bowl, and in the first quarter, I already know the outcome because you get ramrodded. I despise nothing more than that on Super Bowl Sunday. So I'm of the mindset, just hoping and praying that it can be close. And as long as it's close, it changes everything, because then I think Denver's offense will become emboldened because they're still in the game. Cam Newton and that offense knows what it can do. That defense in Carolina knows what it can do. Denver's defense ranked 4th overall, number 1 in yards allowed, number 1 against the pass, number 3 against the rush. They have emphatically stated what they can do. The only question in all of this is a big question in the fact that there are questions about Peyton Manning's offense in Denver. But if they can keep it close, okay, and we've got like a 17-13 score after 3 quarters or something like that, it could potentially change everything, because guys could be as calm, cool, and collected as they want to be with a Super Bowl championship on the line, okay, and you got 15 minutes left, and it's for all the marbles, and both teams are within striking distance. Palms can get sweaty. Backsides can get tight. And the men from the boys get separated. Everybody can't handle those big moments. Let's see what happens.
You know, you missed your calling. You should have been in PR for either CBS or maybe ESPN or for First Take or for the Denver Broncos, because you're going Don King here. It's like fight hype, and you've got the underdog, right?
You want me to wave the American flag?
You needed a flag. That would have been more impressive. You would have driven it home with the flag, because I'm going to hold your feet to the fire here. Do you really believe it's going to be 17-13 going to the fourth quarter? I don't know.
I said the operative word was hope. I hope that it will be tight, because I don't want a blowout. I want a nail biter.
Well, so
I want something akin to last year. I want something close. Please don't get me wrong. I don't believe it's going to happen. I believe Denver could be in a world of trouble. But I also believe that, again, if you are Carolina, and it's because sometimes they don't bring their A game offensively. Cam has been sensational, but sometimes that offense is not sensational. And if that happens and it's tight as the game wanes, I'm not worried about Cam, but is Ted Ginn going to drop a pass? Yes, I mean, is Funches real ready? I mean, he's a young dude. Is he ready? I mean, when you look at some of these guys, you just have to ask yourself those questions. The defense, are you going to take Peyton Manning for granted? Because let's face reality, they're not going to say it. They're going to give all the respect in the world to Peyton Manning. They're not going to admit publicly, but they don't think that Peyton Manning can really fling that football over the course of 60 minutes. Yep. They know he can make the pass. They know he can make a pass. But in terms of what their strategy is, if you neutralize the run and force this dude to drop back and pass and fling that football all night long, how long is he going to be able to do it over the course of 60 minutes? Because of it, it could provoke them to take chances they may not need to take risk they may not need to take. That's the kind of stuff that can make it interesting. That's what sports is all about. I'm holding out hope that it will be tight come the fourth quarter, because I love the moments where we're able to establish the men from the boys. And by the way, I would never, ever, ever beating PR. If I wasn't doing this, I would have been a criminal lawyer.
Johnny Cochran.
Yes, and by the way, I will say this to you. I would have been Johnny Cochran, God rest his soul. But if I was against him, O.J. Simpson would have been in jail the first time because I never would have lost that case. I can promise you that.
We'll get to
I would
that
have beat
subject
Johnny
later.
Cochran in 1995.
We are going to discuss O.J. Simpson later.
Yes.
Maybe not.
I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I ain't joking. I would have beaten Johnny Cochran in that case. He wouldn't have beat me in that case.
But I'll leave that be. I'll let you hold on to that grand illusion.
They'd have never tried on the glove. They'd have never tried on the glove. I wouldn't have let that.
We need to keep rooting against the Cowboys and Brady because this relaxed, Skip. I mean, no dog in the fight. You're so relaxed about this game. You're just ready to go. You're
you're very blasé. I don't know about you. I don't know about you right now. I mean, you're very blasé.
Look, here's my bottom line to this. The only time I've ever seen a favorite crumble and get upset in the Super Bowl is when the favorite's quarterback, and I don't love this word, the CH word, but I'm going to use it, when he chokes, when the Super Bowl stage is just too big, Super Bowl stage fright. We saw it with Carson Palmer. I thought Carson Palmer would play much better. What was it was it Saturday? I'm losing. No, Sunday. Yeah, last Sunday.
Yep.
And then the previous Saturday.
Yeah.
He stunk it up in both games by his standards of the regular season and really his career standards because he just came apart. His nerves got to him. That's just me. I know he had a dislocated finger and maybe that factored in a little bit, but not that much. And my question becomes then, Is Cam Newton going to choke on the Super Bowl stage? No.
Well,
I just don't see. I'm sorry.
Well,
I know it's his first Super Bowl, but I don't see it.
I don't see that either. But let's also keep in mind that Peyton Manning, after winning his first Super Bowl, beating Brady in that AFC Championship game, then going to the Super Bowl and beating Rex Grossman and the Chicago Bears, he came back a few years later threw the interception to Tracy Porter, and that sealed the deal for the New Orleans Saints and Drew Brees when Peyton Manning threw that interception. Then they turned around. And then, obviously, he got drubbed by Seattle. So I don't want to call it choking, but an experienced veteran, universally recognized as one of, if not the greatest regular season quarterback to have ever played the game and clearly one of the greatest quarterbacks ever, did not really produce in 2 of his last 3 Super Bowls. Not entirely. Now, it wasn't his fault against Seattle. He had no help.
Okay.
But against New Orleans, that was on him. That was on their physical coordinator. That was on the predictability of the plays that Reggie Wayne highlighted on the NFL Network last week. And if they kept running all afternoon long and Tracy Porter jumped the route and beat him to it.
That.
So, that's right.
It's blasphemy. You can't watch the NFL Network.
Well, I mostly watch ESPN. I mostly watch ESPN. Right. I mean, damn, I can't watch. I got to have a life too.
You don't.
It can't be everything ESPN. I'm sorry. I love y'all. Happy to work here, but damn.
He used to watch me.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, I watch ABC. I watch ABC too. I mean, you don't have a bigger General Hospital fan than me. It's 40 years of counting. So that's Walt Disney.
Yeah.
Such a loyal viewer.
Oh well.
All right. This game also going to be broadcast in Spanish if people prefer to see it. It'll be on ESPN Deportes 6:30 Eastern as well. Oh gosh.
That's impressive.
Yeah. I'm sure he loves the Latin ladies. All right. We'll leave that there.
Yes, I do.
The other major storyline, we know you're from New York. Besides Carolina being heavy favorites is, of course, Peyton's future. Is this his swan song? Here's number 18.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's been confirmed or not. I mean, what happened to private conversations on the 50-yard line? I mean, I guess they just don't exist anymore. So, no confirmation on that whatsoever. As we are on to Carolina. We're on to Carolina.
No more private convos at the 50-yard line. Peyton pleads the 5th on his subject of retirement. On to Carolina. Stephen A. Smith, what do you expect that he's going to do in terms of his future?
In terms of his future, I think he's going to retire. I think this is Peyton Manning's last game. I don't think Peyton Manning will play another game in the National Football League because I really, really believe that he recognizes that his health cannot stand up in today's game. Yeah, they do everything they can to protect the quarterback, but he's had a lot of hits. He's incurred a lot of bodily damage, and I just believe that he recognizes that the end is near. I don't think that Peyton Manning utters the words might be my last rodeo lightly. I don't think that's something you just throw out as if to say you're thinking about it. You can always pick up the phone and call a Bill Belichick or somebody else later and thank them for who they are and what they've meant, what it's meant to you to compete against them. To say that at midfield on the football field, I think it's one of those situations where he knows it's over and that it should be over, because as great as Peyton Manning is, he understands the concept of team better than anybody. He believes in it. He lives by it. He epitomizes it in every way. He's a first-class individual and a first-class player. And you know how I feel about his family as well. They're wonderful, and that includes Eli, obviously. But it's one of those situations where I think that, you know, those words don't come out of his mouth lightly, Skip. I don't think that's something that he would have ever said unless his decision had been made. And to me, it's clear that John Elway wants wants next year and beyond to be the Brock Osweiler era, if not someone else other than Peyton. He kept his word. I think John Elway is a sensational executive. He's been a sensational executive in Denver. I think the city of Denver is lucky to have him, but I don't think anybody's luckier than Peyton Manning, because he has an executive in John Elway that has kept his word. He talked about building a Super Bowl contender around Peyton Manning, giving him an opportunity to get to the Super Bowl, and he's done it twice with the personnel that he's put around him. And so Peyton Manning recognizes this, and I don't think he wants to go someplace else and start anew. The only way he would stay is if he stayed in Denver. And I think Denver used the few last weeks during the regular season to emphatically state the obvious. They're ready to move on beyond Peyton Manning after this season. I think next Sunday, February 7th, is the last game of Peyton Manning's professional career.
And I disagree. I will agree with half of what you just said. I believe that next Sunday, a week from Sunday, will be the final game of Peyton Manning's Denver career. But this is just my 2 cents from a distance. I don't have any inside info on this. I believe that the only way this will be Peyton's last rodeo is if it's 17-13 going to the fourth quarter and Peyton throws the winning touchdown pass and they pull off what will be seen as a big upset of Cam and company. That's the only way that he will do what Miss Connecticut here would like to see, which is Peyton. Well, you want to see him ride off into the sunset on the white horse, the Denver Bronco.
And I'm the only one who believes it'll happen.
Right? Okay. Well, you might be one of few. I mean, sure, a lot of people would like to see that. I think not many people think they're going to get to witness that, and I don't either, which brings me to my conclusion here, or my opinion. I think Peyton's going to play again elsewhere for a couple of 3 more years. And here's why. Just as we talked about yesterday with Cam, Russell Wilson, we're seeing a breakthrough quarterback in the NFL, one who can throw from the pocket and run called plays for touchdowns. I think we're also seeing a new breed on the other end, too. And it's led by 2 quarterbacks, 2 old men quarterbacks, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning. They're looking at 40 as the new 30. Have you heard Tom talk about retirement at 38? Nope. He's saying, I'm going to play, what's he been saying, like 5 or 7 more years? I don't know. And I'm not going to bet against Tom Brady playing till he's 45. I'm also not going to bet against Peyton Manning playing till he's 43. Because I believe, if I'm reading the tea leaves correctly through this season, that John Elway was trying to ease Peyton out the door. And I believe Peyton did not love that, because because Brock Osweiler is John's new guy, it's the future, and clearly he showed that he can be the future. John Elway, to me, was poised to go forward with Brock Osweiler into the playoffs. Remember, Gary Kubiak made a gutsy, game-changing, season-changing decision in that second half of that final regular season game at home that they were trailing to San Diego. He said, I'm going with my relief pitcher, the Hall of Famer. You right? I'm going to put Peyton Manning in the game. And I was shocked by it. And I'm going to guess. that John Elway was at least surprised by it. And we know the rest of the story. Peyton played great the rest of the way. Peyton played very well in these 2 playoff games. And if I can swing around here and make any case for this being a game, a competitive contest in the Super Bowl, I'm going to lean on my man Ron Jaworski, what he said on Mike and Mike this morning. He said he's put in the tape of those 2 games, Pittsburgh, New England, obviously both in Denver, and that he said, I'm paraphrasing slightly, but Ron's takeaway from watching the film was, Peyton looks the same. Like he says, I see no difference in this Peyton as in his prime Peyton. And I've been telling you that also. Against Pittsburgh, he threw for 222 with whatever drops it was.
7.
It was really
I counted 6. They said 6 and 7.
I counted 7 because I was jotting them down, and I had 7. Well, he easily could have thrown for 300 yards against Pittsburgh. The key stat, obviously, in both games is the big 0, the goose egg he put up because he threw no interceptions and no interceptions, no fumbles, no turnovers. If Peyton Manning can refrain from turning the football over against Carolina, then maybe you can make a case that they'll hang in this game. Because, listen, Carolina is rocket-fueled by turnovers. So, in this case, then he plays against New England. That first half, that was some vintage Peyton Manning. I got to tell you, the 2 touchdowns to Owen Daniels, the fade the route.
He was throwing a lot.
He was throwing the football. And again, everyone says, oh, he's lost his velocity. What velocity? I never saw velocity to start with. It was all timing. It was anticipation. It's getting rid of the ball before the receiver comes out of his breaks. It's knowing, it's seeing things before the defense even knows what they're going to do. That's Peyton Manning, and he's still playing at that level. So what more does he have to do? It's always funny to me. People say, oh, you need to retire. And he's probably thinking, and do what? Do I want to go work for ESPN yet? Maybe not. What if he thinks he's got 3 good years of football left? Would you blame him? Would you hold it against him if he said, I want to be a free agent. I'll go somewhere where I think I have another chance to win. Now, that's if they lose. If they lose.
Well, let me go a little Caliendo on you, Frank as in the great Frank Caliendo, when I'm talking about George and saying, I do not believe that is true with Peyton Manning. I do not believe that he looks the same. I love my man George.
He's Stephen B. Smith or Stephen A. Smith?
That's Stephen B. That's Stephen B. That's Stephen B. You watch. I love it. I love it. I love Stephen B. Smith. Love Caliendo. But let me say this to you. I love me some George. I mean, I get an education from him in the game of football every time I talk to him. That's one of the highlights of me working on Sunday mornings, being around the guys and especially him. Love him. But I don't agree with him here, and I know George is watching. No, George, I don't believe you on this one. No, Peyton Manning does not look the same. He has not looked the same. And Skip, I am a person, I want to make sure that I'm very, very clear with what I'm about to say. I totally believe Peyton Manning when he says he never tried to get a competitive edge, the HGH story was bogus, and all of this other stuff. But I'm telling you right now, if Peyton Manning is playing 3 years from now, I'm going to have to revisit that opinion. Because I'm telling you right now, I'm going to think about some HGH. If the Peyton Manning that I watched this year.
You get that. Then they didn't, now they test.
If the Peyton Manning that I watched this year is playing 3 years from now?
Yeah.
Oh, no. He need to be tested. No way in hell. I don't believe it for 1 second. Not for 1 second. He might come back after this year, play somewhere else next year. I don't think so. I still hold to the opinion this is going to be it for him. It'll be over. But it's always possible that he could change his position a little bit, go and play another year. I personally, unless he's content, like if he can't go, he's willing to be a backup, willing to teach, willing to be a face of a franchise, propel them into a new era, playing the role of the elder statesman and just trying to help guys out. But I'm talking about Peyton Manning, the elite starting quarterback that we've known him to be for the better part of the last 17, 18 years. If that Peyton Manning is playing 3 years from now, I need him checked because I don't believe it. No way on earth. This is it. He might play next year, but I'm betting my money that this game, Super Bowl 50, is his last.
All right.
And by the way, stop raving about what he did against Pittsburgh. We know their secondary stunk. We all know that. Steelers they were 30th against 31st against the pass. They were horrible against the pass. They've been horrible against the pass all year long. As far as I'm concerned, Tomlin and those boys shouldn't draft anything but cornerbacks and safeties. You need to improve the secondary for crying out loud. An additional pass rusher would help too. But you need to just load up on the defense. I don't care what Peyton Manning did against that defense. The Steelers defense is weak.
Jim Brown, the last man to bring a championship to the city of Cleveland a very long time ago, was asked about Johnny Manziel at a Cleveland charity event last night. This might surprise you. Brown said he wants the team to keep Johnny. Quote, "I don't want to see him traded or anything like that. I just think that's never the answer to anything. Your leadership has to be able to deal with players, and I don't think that Johnny is a bad guy. But I think he needs someone to deal with him, give him an opportunity to be the nice Johnny, the intelligent Johnny." Stephen A., do you agree?
Respectfully, I don't. And I utter the words respectfully because obviously Jim Brown is an iconic figure. He's somebody that, you know, I know a little bit personally. We've communicated on several occasions, you know, over the years. And he's one of those individuals that I give that tag E.F. Hutton to. When he speaks, I listen. He's one of the godfathers, one of the pioneers. And the level of respect that I have for him cannot be measured. I don't believe he's right in this situation, however, because I think the one thing that he's ignored or may have gotten by him in all of this is that, you know, the heart and compassion that he has for folks who make mistakes and, you know, the need for forgiveness and to move forward, as well as him accurately highlighting how, you know, modern day coaches, executives, and franchises overall need to do a better job of communicating with today's generation of athletes. What I believe that he's overlooked is the fact that Johnny Manziel, to some degree, may be acting up. It could be because he has a problem, but it could also be because he genuinely has a problem with being in Cleveland. He does not want to be there. And if you don't want to be there, you shouldn't be there. And that's the thing. You don't force somebody to just sit there and endure a level of unhappiness that clearly Johnny Manziel must be enduring. He's from Texas. He's come from a very affluent background. He's not from the streets. He's not starving. He's not going to starve. And so when you take it from that standpoint, he is a privileged individual who sometimes comes across as just that. So it's bad enough that he may have his issues, and it's bad enough that the Cleveland Browns have that challenge. But then you also can't contribute to his happiness by asking him to stay in a place where he's given every indication that he doesn't want to be, where he doesn't want to be at. You just don't need to do that. So I respect where Jim Brown is coming from on its face. But as you dig deeper into whether it's the psyche, the resume, the history of Johnny Manziel, he does not want to be there. He doesn't want to be a part of the Cleveland Browns. If you sat up there and told Johnny Manziel he was going to be a Dallas Cowboy, he was going to be a Houston Texan, that brother would be so happy he wouldn't know what to do with himself. He doesn't want to be in Cleveland. That is why I disagree with Jim Brown. I think that's the part that he's missing in all of this. You don't force somebody to stay someplace where they're not wanted. And Jim Brown would never go for that, because if you look Jim Brown in the face and tell him you didn't want to be a part of his team or a part of his franchise, Jim Brown would push you out the door quicker than you could say your own damn name.
I hear everything you just said. Maybe a month or so ago, I would have agreed with everything you just said. And now I'm having deep mixed emotions about this topic and how it's going to play out.
Right.
I hear you about maybe Johnny just doesn't want to be in Cleveland. That was a fact. He didn't want to be in Cleveland and play for the regime that was run by Ray Farmer and Mike Pettin, because it never clicked. They didn't want him. They didn't want to draft him. And he found that environment to be a loser's environment. We've had a big sea change in Cleveland, man. Big regime change, starting with Hugh Jackson and leading to two guys that I have a lot of respect for. I know they don't have any track record, but I'm going to say it again. Good things are about to happen in Cleveland thanks to Sashi Brown and Paul DePodesta, because they have high combined brain power. And I thought it was astonishingly significant that Hugh Jackson could have gone to your Giants. He knew it was sitting right there. They had the interview scheduled, and he sat with Sashi and Paul and immediately said, you know what? These guys are smart. I'm smart. I'm clicking with them. I know how to win at this sport of pro football, because I've been around. These guys haven't been around, but they get it. And together, if we combine forces, we're going to make good things happen in Cleveland, Ohio. And Hugh Jackson said, I'm here. You got me. Cancel my interview with the Giants. You and I talked about this. Go ahead. What do you want to say?
Well, the reason why I say you're not wrong in anything that you're saying, but I don't think that you're giving enough cachet or credence to the ego factor as it pertains to Hugh Jackson. Hugh Jackson, got to remember, if he goes to the Giants, Jerry Reese is your GM and he's a football guy. And he's surrounded by a bunch of football guys. DePodesta is coming from Major League Baseball. Sashi Brown, if I remember correctly, is a lawyer by trade.
Yeah.
So
got a sports background, but
sports background,
have an NFL background. Yeah.
Right. But even though they're two individuals, I'm not challenging that they're two individuals of very, very high intellect.
Trust me, they
are. Essentially, Hugh Jackson is the football guy.
Sure.
So what he's doing is he's not just a coach, but he's the football guy, buffered by two brilliant guys without a football background. So he's able. So if you're looking at it from that perspective, it's not just about, oh my God, they're so brilliant, they're so wonderful. It could easily also be about the fact that Hugh Jackson gets to do his own thing without quote unquote the title.
I'm with you.
And so that could have factored into the equation as well. So when you look at it from that perspective, isn't that a lot for Hugh Jackson to have to handle? Now you need him to babysit your quarterback?
Yep.
No way. No, it's not an ideal. It's not an idea. If this was just a matter of Johnny Manziel, the football player, then Jim Brown is right on the money. But if this is but everything else that comes with Johnny Manziel, you can't risk the distraction that it would be.
Hugh Jackson knew all too well what the competition is in the AFC North, because he just went from Cincinnati to Cleveland, and he knows what the score is. Now you got to deal with those Bengals and those Steelers and those Ravens. It is hard, man. You were at the bottom looking up. You could have had Eli Manning, and after we talk about the dearth of African-American coaches, he could have worked with an African-American GM and Jerry Reese in New York. It seemed like the perfect fit from a distance to start with. And all of a sudden he said, I'll take the Browns. Wow.
Well, listen, Skip, when you look at it based on what I said, of course you would take the Browns job because it's your show. It's essentially your show. Whereas with the Giants, you got to remember, it could be changes because even though they got rid of Coughlin and kept everybody else, and Hugh Jackson coming in game one, in year one rather, and Dallas is the favorite in the division, and the Eagles got a new coach in Peterson, and the Redskins are on the come up with Kirk Cousins, and they're the reigning, defending NFC East champions. There's a lot there as well. Whereas in Cleveland, it's your baby, and you might get to have decision-making power that you otherwise would not have in New York. So those are things to consider as well.
Fair.
And you just don't want.
You
just don't want the risk. You don't want the risk of that distraction. I've spoken to Hugh Jackson several times.
What undercuts this whole premise is the fact that so far Hugh Jackson has completely ignored Johnny Manziel, has not spoken with him, has had other interviews with other key players, has interviews scheduled in the next week, and no Johnny yet. And he's made you can infer from his comments he's not interested in going forward with Johnny Manziel. Go ahead.
I can tell you right now, a legitimate argument could be made that I've spoken to Hugh Jackson more than Johnny Manziel has since Hugh Jackson became the coach.
Well, I hope so. You have, because Johnny's zero, I'm pretty sure.
Exactly. There you go.
Okay, so that's not a good sign for Johnny Manziel. And I've spoken to
Hugh Jackson 2 or 3 times. He was at the Cleveland Warriors game.
I know. I got that. Obviously, Johnny has unaddressed issues that we both talked to death, and I don't want to talk about it anymore because that has to get fixed first. But now let's get back to the great Jim Brown. First thing I wrote down was the first thing you said. Before we even did this topic, I wrote down, when Jim Brown speaks, I listen. And you opened up with that. So I'm listening. Jim Brown. Jim Brown sees in Johnny what I think I have seen in Johnny back to his first year at Texas A&M. Jim Brown sees star quality. He sees rare. He sees difference maker. If he can get a hold of himself and his circumstance, or if somebody can command Johnny's respect enough as his leader, as his coach, as his GM, whoever that is, that Jim Brown is saying, don't give up on him yet. It will be a mistake to trade him. I can make the case it will. Now, do I want to see Johnny as the backup and heir apparent to my Dallas Cowboys? I do. Yeah, to my Cowboys, I do. You're probably right. This probably isn't the greatest fit. But if I were any of these new decision makers of the Cleveland Browns, I'd be a little queasy about dumping Johnny Manziel and watching him turn into something somewhere else.
Not in Cleveland. You could get away with getting rid of him in Cleveland because of all the problems
well,
he scores off the
you can get away with it, but
some second thoughts because of Jim Brown.
I don't know. Listen, Jim Brown could be right. We could be having another conversation 5 years from today, after Johnny makes his second Pro Bowl in Dallas, and you'd be saying, boy, those Browns, they could have.
Well, that would be because he wanted to be in Dallas.
Okay.
He doesn't want to be in Cleveland.
Turns off the stagger screen and fires a three. While the drama around Blake Griffin and the Clippers continues to grab headlines, the play on the court hasn't suffered.
Chris Paul, step back, Jay. Oh, yeah, for Chris Paul.
Chris Paul, DeAndre Jordan, and the Clippers look to continue to roll when they face Jimmy Butler, Pau Gasol, and the Chicago Bulls.
Butler down court, throws it down the two-hand.
Coverage begins Sunday at 2:30 Eastern on ABC and on ESPN Radio.
Meanwhile, our Mike Sando wrote a column on ESPN.com on the eclectic group of Super Bowl MVP winners. And when Sando stacked the MVP performances against each other, Tom Brady's performance in Super Bowl 49 against the Seahawks, which was pretty sick, landed at number 17. Skip.
Wait, say that again?
That
17?
Super Bowl last year was number 17 on your guy Mike Sando's list.
Look. I don't know Mike Sando, but I read every word he ever writes. I love what he writes. This is the worst ever, Mike. I'm sorry. Not only should he not be 17, his other Super Bowl against Carolina is at 16. He shouldn't be at 15 or 14 or 13. He should have been a runaway, no doubt, number one on this list for what he did to the Seattle Seahawks in last year's Super Bowl. Shouldn't have even been close. And this, Stephen A., this falls back into that category. I don't want to call it Brady hate, but it's jealousy, it's resentment, it's not enough respect for. I don't get it, because what he did to what was regarded going into the game as one of the all-time greatest defenses in the history of the National Football League should easily qualify as number one. Just off the top, remember, they couldn't run the ball against Seattle. They tried to run it 21 times. They ran for 57 yards. That's an average of 2.7 yards. So the entire burden fell back on number 12 to basically offensively beat the Seahawks by himself. He set the Super Bowl record for completions with 37. He set the Super Bowl record for first downs via pass with 21. And do I have to remind you what he did to an all-time great Seahawks defense in the fourth quarter when Tom Brady went 13 of 15 for 124 yards in the fourth quarter? That was a QBR scale of 0 to 100 in the fourth quarter of 97. 2 touchdowns, brought his team from 24 to 14 down, and we all know what happened at the end. But Tom Brady won the game. You can say that the Seahawks lost the game. Tom Brady put his team in position to win the football game with his arm and his head. And it was the best performance I've ever seen in a Super Bowl. And I don't know how circumstantially you can argue any other game played by any other quarterback, but I will let you try. Or you can agree with me if you so choose, which would be the smart way to go.
Well, then I'm an idiot because I'm not agreeing with you. And we all know how emotional. And listen, we all know that you have no objectivity whatsoever. Oh, okay. I mean, we're talking about Tom Brady here. Who expects you to be honest?
Did I not state the truth from start to finish?
Well, you stated the truth in terms of he didn't deserve to be ranked 17th. I do get that point. It should be higher. There's a few of them that I think it should be higher than. I think it should be higher than Larry Zonka's performance. I think it should be higher, than a few other performances as well. Riggins as well. stuff like that. But I will tell you, Skip, it's a toss-up for me. You got Phil Simms' performance in Super Bowl 21, where he completed all 10 of his second half passes for like 165 yards and 2 touchdowns, and he was absolutely sensational in that second half against the Buffalo Bills. But my favorite is for my Steelers. My favorites for my Steelers, of course, Terry Bradshaw, Super Bowl 13, and what he was able to do, throwing for over 300 yards, throwing for 4 touchdown passes, completing 8 of his 9 passes. Yes, you were there. He was Terry Bradshaw was absolutely sensational, not just with that, but with his play calling as well. And obviously, it was a thriller. Your Dallas Cowboys, if I remember correctly, lost that Super Bowl. No surprise there. No surprise there. Okay,
Jackie
so the way I look at it,
touchdown pass.
Yes, he did.
It was a terrible
Slater
call on Benny Barnes, my cornerback.
Jackie Slater.
That even the NFL later admitted was a bad call. So anyway, it happens.
It happens. But well, listen, I keep trying to tell you, the Dallas Cowboys. What do I say? Say it with me. An accident waiting to happen. Okay, this is who they are. This is who they are. This is who they've been. So that's what it is.
They beat the Denver Broncos in a Super Bowl, and they beat the Miami Dolphins in a Super Bowl, and then they won 3 in the early '90s that should have been 4. But go ahead.
Well, listen, I don't count, when it comes to the Cowboys, I don't count the Emmitt Smith, Michael Irvin, Troy Aikman era. I love those dudes. No. I'm saying I got love for them. You understand? I've hated the Cowboys since them, but not while they were there. And, of course, my boy Prime Time, of course. But, by the way, listen. In the end, what it comes down to, I think Terry Bradshaw's performance could easily go down. I think when you think about Joe Montana and just destroying, Denver, I mean, look, it's so lopsided. I can't really go with that because that's just a collective collapse on the part of the opponent. But I think about Bradshaw and how epic that Super Bowl was and what he was able to do in the second half. That resonates with me. I put that ahead of Tom Brady.
Okay. Let me go back to Phil Simms.
Okay.
Giants were favored by 9 points in that game. They ended up winning 37-20 against the Broncos defense that was ranked 15th in the National Football League. And I thought it was a lousy defense because that team was basically Elway or bust. And the Giants defense was certainly good enough, featuring Lawrence Taylor, to make him bust.
Yeah, you're right. I said Buffalo and I meant Giants. I'm sorry.
Right.
I mean Broncos.
Okay. Broncos. And then Montana's number 1. In that game, they were, again, against another bad defense, although that defense ranked first in points allowed that year, but I thought it was misleading. They won 2 home games. They were 11-5. They were a 13-point underdog to Joe Montana, and he just cut them to pieces. It was over like that. He threw 5 touchdown passes. I was there, and it was just bombs away, and every time I looked up, there was another. Jerry Rice was just running under another deep throw, wide open. I don't know. It's not against the Seattle Seahawks defense. Now, I'll give you, it's close what Terry Bradshaw did to my Dallas Cowboys. But remember, he's throwing to 2 of the greatest receivers ever, 2 Hall of Fame receivers in Swan and Stallworth. And he did have Franco, and he did have Rocky Bleier. And his team was just absolutely loaded on offense and defense because he had the steel curtain defense. By the way, that game featured the greatest collection of talent on one football field I have ever witnessed anywhere. So I'm with you. I give magnitude to what you're saying. But when you take Tom Brady without that much, other than Gronkowski, you don't have much to throw to. It's Edelman and Amendola. These are not Swan and Stallworth that he's throwing to, and he doesn't have the steel curtain to back him up. He's having to do it himself. He's having to control the football in time of possession against an all-time great, certainly secondary and Seattle defense. It was just a masterpiece to me, and I'll give you Terry Bradshaw's number 2. I'll give you that.
Well, listen, and think about it this way. You put it that way, I'll put it to you this way, Skip Bayless. On third downs, Terry Bradshaw in that Super Bowl that was won 35-31 with Jackie Slater dropping the ball, hit him right in his chest by Staubach and those boys. Here's the deal. On third downs alone, Terry Bradshaw was sacked 4 times, fumbled the ball twice, and one was returned for a touchdown.
By Mike Hagman.
But yet by Hagman. Yet in the aftermath of all of that, Skip Bayless, the man completes 8 or 9 passes in the second half for 156 yards on third down. After being sacked 4 times. Let's think about that for a second here. I'm just saying, Terry Bradshaw, that was a sensational Super Bowl. I'm sorry. I will put that Number one.
And as he said after the game, and as Cliff Harris and Charlie Waters told me after the game, Landry stuck us in man defense every first down. We were man-to-man on the edges against Swan and Stallworth, and Bradshaw laughed about it to me later when I got to know him in Dallas and said we knew every first down was like bombs away.
So, in case you missed this earlier, Carolina is a 5.5-point favorite and counting. As of Wednesday evening, 87% of the spread bets and 94% of the total money wagered at William Hill US were on Carolina. Ryan Clark here now to weigh in on this subject. Hello, Ryan.
Hello.
How we doing?
Doing well, doing well. Happy to be here.
I'm not, because of
Here
this
we go.
topic.
Yeah. He thinks we might not even need to turn on the TV.
Yeah, why don't we just call it off?
Yeah.
Well, if you look at the spread, I was listening to two very intelligent journalists speak yesterday about the Golden State Warriors and how the Golden State Warriors are really taking the fun, the excitement, the suspense kind of out of the NBA. That's what this spread is doing right now to the Super Bowl, because it keeps growing. But can you really blame Vegas? Can you really blame the bettors? If you look at the Carolina Panthers and the way they've played, not only during the season but in the playoffs, jumping out to a huge lead on Seattle, even though the second half Russell Wilson and that offense was able to make a run when Carolina Panthers kind of shut it down offensively. The Arizona game, it was score after score after score. You listen to Peyton Manning, and he was like, man, by the time I got out of the stadium, the Carolina Panthers were up 20 points. And so if you look at the way that things have been going and the way that Denver's played in these two playoff games, if Roby doesn't make the play on the fumble, maybe they lose that game. Maybe. If Antonio Brown is able to play, I definitely think they have trouble winning that game. So it hasn't been like Denver has been gangbusters. I'm sitting in the green room yesterday, and TJ Ward texted me. He's like, I told you about, betting against us, bro. He's like, what, you got no faith in your boy? I was like, I had a ton of faith in you. I just don't have a ton of faith in your team that they're better than the Carolina Panthers. Texting with Eric Weddle, he was trying to say the same thing because he's an AFC West guy. He's like, this Denver defense is tough, man. They're special. And I just kept telling him, but the way that Carolina's playing as a whole team, you have to understand why people feel this way about the game. We've seen Super Bowl blowouts before.
Oh, have we?
The Buffalo Bills, other than the game with the Norwood missed kick, got blown out every time they went.
Every time.
And so you look at the Denver Broncos before they were able to come through. The Doug Williams Super Bowl, it was over before it even started. And so we've seen these
Remember
games.
Elway's first three Super Bowls.
Right, San Francisco. It was just route. Yeah. So we've seen this before from a Denver team, a Peyton Manning team against Seattle 3 years ago. And so this is not like an unprecedented situation, and I think Vegas knows that, the bettors know that, and we look at a team that's 15-1. Peyton Manning hasn't been the same Peyton Manning. This team has struggled to win 2 games, although against a very good New England team. I can understand why it's this way. I just don't want it to be another Super Bowl letdown Sunday instead of a great Sunday for us viewers and us fans.
Stephen A?
Ryan, who did you say you spoke to first? Was it TJ Ward?
Yeah.
Tell him to stop it. You know what I'm saying? I mean, in college, rather than, when you tell somebody to shut up, but when you got respect and affection for them, because TJ Ward is a bad boy and I got a lot of love for him, you say, shut up, okay? That's an affectionate way of telling somebody to be quiet. Just shut up, all right? Here's why. He knows good and damn well what he's thinking and what he's feeling. And you tell me if I'm wrong, Ryan, since you played in the NFL for a decade and you won a Super Bowl championship. You know what I'm talking about. You trying to tell me when your defense is big time that y'all don't sit back there and go like this. Look, we know what we going to do. What's the offense going to do? Yeah, that's what we worried about. We know what we going to do. What are y'all going to do? Now, you might not say that to them. You certainly ain't going to say it publicly, but you trying to tell me that Denver defense ain't thinking about that? You ain't thinking about that at all, watching this offense struggle the way that it had this year. Peyton Manning goes down, but prior to going down, 9 touchdowns, 17 interceptions, ends the season, a regular season with a QBR of 44, Skip's favorite statistic. All right, Demaryius Thomas dropping passes, Vernon Davis leaving his hands in San Francisco. Okay, I mean, don't get me started. The running game, inconsistent, running well one week, not running well the next. There are questions about this offense. You trying to tell me, Ryan, the TJ and Vaughn and DeMarcus and all of those boys ain't looking at Peyton Manning and that crew and they ain't going like this? we know what we gonna do. What y'all gonna do?
I would say this
to me.
I was on teams like that. You know, in 2008, statistically, we were the best defense in like 25 years. And there were games we beat San Diego that year 11-10. And there were games, but we felt like we were so good defensively that it didn't matter. And in the Super Bowl, it ended up being that the offense won the game. We tried to lose it. We let Larry Fitzgerald go nuts in the fourth quarter. And so I think Denver feels like when you have a Peyton Manning, when you've been able to win games the way you're playing, they feel like they can win. TJ and Vaughn and Chris Harris Jr., they feel like their defense is good enough to stop anybody. And when you can play defense, that travels.
Yep. But before I answer this question, I need the definition of shell up. I don't get it.
Yeah,
I just need
well, you know how you want to tell somebody to shut up, but you want to do so in a way where you're not being mean-spirited or derogatory. It comes from college, Skip.
Okay.
And actually high school, I had a teacher, you know, Molly, Skip, y'all met my boy Jeff Brown. We went to high school in New York together. We had a teacher, his name was Mr. Burgervoy. That was his name.
You probably made fun of his name. I bet you did.
Electrical installation. I studied electrical installation in high school. Okay? And
this is great.
Electrical installation. I went to a vocational technical high school, Thomas Edison High School in Queens, New York, and I studied electrical installation. Obviously, I'm in the right profession because I'd be damned if I would have been good at that. I probably would have burned somebody's house down. But the point is, Mr. Burgervoy used to tell us to shut up. He never said shut up. He said shut up.
And it stuck
with us all of these years.
So wait, you
like a very Ninja Turtle type thing.
It does actually. So wait, you could have been an electrician. Is that what we're saying?
Well, I don't believe I could have, but I studied it. But I had every intention. If journalism didn't work out, I had every intention of going to law school to be a criminal lawyer. I'm dead serious about that.
All right,
I really was going to do that.
I'd actually go to court. So you have those skills.
Wait, he can't fix his iPhone, but he could fix your wiring at your house, right?
Cable guy.
Okay.
I love it. That would be fantastic.
Man, a jack of all trades.
Okay.
Jack of all trades, Ryan.
Back to the issue at hand.
Yeah.
When I try to attempt to talk myself out of my depression over the Patriots not being in this game, because if we had Tom Brady, Cam Newton, we'd be having a debate right now about what would happen in this game. It would be much more debatable, electrifying, just flat out captivating, those two teams matching up. So now I have to look at what's wrong with Carolina, because I haven't seen much wrong all year. But I did see them in the fourth quarter at the Giants. I don't know if they just took their mental foot off the gas, but they blew 35-7.
Indianapolis?
35. What's that? Yeah, they did. That's another one. Okay. And then we saw what Russell Wilson did, obviously with foot completely off the gas, 31-0 down at halftime, all the way back to 31-24. Got a little dicey. So is that okay? Now I'm looking at Peyton's offense. The best thing Peyton did in those two playoff games was 0. He did not turn it over. He did not lose a fumble. So if you can put up a 0 against this defense that ran away with takeaways in the NFL, 39, the next team was Arizona with 28. And then they take 2 away from Russell Wilson and company, and then they take 7 away from Arizona. You've seen these teams get on the Super Bowl roll where just everything breaks, every bounce goes right, every tip ball you intercept it, and you're just on this unstoppable roll. And that's the way that defense feels like. So, okay, let's say Peyton has a really nice game, and he puts up, let's say,
3 touchdowns?
24. I'll give him, 24. Can this defense then keep Cam and company from scoring 30, 28, 27? I don't think so, because Cam Newton, this is the year of Cam. It's breakout, breakthrough. His offense is virtually unstoppable because he can be virtually unstoppable. He is a born winner. It just feels like it's his time. He won in junior college, the national championship. He won the national championship at Auburn.
Skip,
and do I think for 1 second, but for 1 second, do I think that he's going to come apart on the Super Bowl stage? I do not.
Not at all.
I think he will light up to it, and you will get the greatest of young. He's still young, but whatever he has to give you in greatness, he will give you in this game, and I think he will be the MVP of this game.
I think it's obvious, Skip. So can you do us a favor, please, and challenge yourself and come up with a reason why this is going to be competitive instead of depressing us before the Super Bowl even gets here? I mean, could you do that?
I think that was the worst thing that happened for the rest of the.
It did. I agree. It was right on time.
I think it was
perfect.
I know.
It did. If they were undefeated, then you could start saying,
"Oh, right." Brought that up when that happened.
Ron Rivera said it on. He said it on. Mike and Mike yesterday. He was just talking about how he had to refocus his team, and you remember that was after the whole Odell Beckham, Josh Norman deal, and he said we took that swagger away. We stopped playing a certain way. We were focused on other things, and it took a injured player to say something about him to say, you know what, we need to get back to being us, having fun. That's the worst thing that happened for the NFL. It refocused the team that needed to be refocused, and they've been in trouble ever since.
O.J. Simpson back in the news, and it is certainly making headlines. The doctor who inspired the movie Concussion told People magazine that he's pretty convinced he can explain the erratic behavior of O.J. Simpson since the end of his 11-year pro football career. Quote, I would bet my medical license that he has CTE. Given his profile, I think it's not an irresponsible conclusion to suspect he has CTE. Now, Simpson, of course, was acquitted of the murders in a highly publicized 1995 trial, but was later convicted of armed robbery and kidnapping charges in 2008. He reportedly considered using CTE as part of his defense in that case. He is currently serving a 33-year sentence at a Nevada prison. Ryan Clark's still here with us. All right, Ryan, what's your reaction to this?
Well, I think now we're getting very dangerous with this. Obviously, because of the movie, because of Dr. Malo's research, he's very well respected when it comes to this topic. And the fact that we're talking about it now really shows that. But now we're getting in dangerous ground because he says he's willing to bet, and it's not irresponsible. I think it's very irresponsible to say what he's saying.
I'm with you.
And for somebody who's a former player and who understands this and who has been in a lot of medical meetings about this, it worries me. For this factor, I'm a former player, right? So now he has so much passion for it. He feels like because Junior Seau or Mike Webster or Durson didn't affect other people, that people didn't care. He feels like that's why Concussion finished behind Alvin and the Chipmunks, because it's not affecting other people. So now when you put this narrative on OJ and the things that he's done since football, it's now affecting society. So he feels like this is a way to get other people involved and make them care about this subject, that it can one day affect you because these football players can fly off the rails because of things that they suffered during their career. So now when I go to get hired, if it's not at ESPN and I go to somewhere else, now do people have to look at me like, will Ryan Clark someday, because of CTE, do something irresponsible? Will we be able to control him? And on the other side of that, now can every former football player who decides to make bad decisions say, you know what, I'm suffering from CTE, or this could be from football, so that's my defense. That's my excuse. And it is irresponsible to say it now. Now, if OJ passes and we're able to do the study and research his brain and we find out he was suffering from CTE, which we can't directly correlate to the decisions he's made since football. And I understand Dr. Malo has a passion for this, and it's great for the players who play now, and it's great for us who after football may have to deal with this. But we can't start attributing bad behavior and making the irresponsible claims that I will bet my medical license. No, you won't, because you can't. There's no betting line in Vegas that says you can put up your medical license. But when you say these things, people take it as word. People take it as Bible. And when you do that, you put a lot of us at risk, and you put a lot of attention on a lot of people who have dealt and played football, and you can't prove it. And that bothers me. I don't think it's right, and I have an issue with it.
Stephen A., before you go, I just want to make sure everyone's clear that you can't test for CTE, as you alluded to, until someone's passed away.
Exactly.
Stephen A.
I completely agree with Ryan and then some. You're absolutely right on the money, and I'm proud for you what you said, because you're absolutely right, and you have every right to say it. Every word you uttered is absolutely on the money. But I'll take it a step further. Skip Bayless, as I recall, Ryan Clark, Molly, as I recall, O.J. Simpson, Orenthal James Simpson, was acquitted of murder charges in 1998, ultimately for armed robbery, and I forgot what else. He was convicted in 2008 and is presently serving a 33-year sentence. Well, what the hell happened to the 13 years in between 1995 and 2008? What happened to O.J. Simpson prior to retiring from his playing career and then subsequently being on commercials? Was CTE an issue when this man was jumping through over suitcases, running through the airport and all of those Hertz commercials? I don't think so. Did he have CTE when he was a pitch man? He seemed pretty lucid with all his faculties in order, with little to no problems at all. A matter of fact, if you listen to the prosecutors, Marsha Clark and I forgot. Please forgive me because both of them just got on my nerves with how awful they were in prosecuting O.J. Simpson. Here's the deal. If I remember correctly, the case that was being made was that, the anger and all of that stuff had a lot to do with the fact that his ex-wife had hooked up with a younger dude, and Ronald Goldman, God rest his soul, and Nicole Brown Simpson's soul. But they were messing around with each other, and the jealousy kicked into play, combined with the fact that obviously O.J. was paying alimony, and she had his car and one of his homes and all of this other stuff. So what, we going to blame that on CTE now? It's just ridiculous. It makes no sense whatsoever. And when you look at it from the perspective that Dr. Amalo would like us to look at it as, essentially what you're trying to do is excuse bad behavior. There are people that just ain't worth a damn. They have no soul. They're evil individuals. They're corrupt. In some cases, yes, they are murderers. You understand? And guess what? CTE doesn't have anything to do with that. And when you know that you can't prove it until they pass away, meaning posthumously, to make a statement like that is incredibly irresponsible. And it's the kind of thing where, you're going to ultimately, if you keep making irresponsible statements like that, we all know that could eventually influence folks who are spectators of the game of football, looking at former football players and wondering what they're going to turn into when irresponsible statements like this are disseminated to the masses. There's no excuse for this whatsoever. It's an incredibly irresponsible statement. It's just finding an excuse for bad behavior as far as I'm concerned. And Dr. Amalu, with all due respect, despite his credentials, which are innumerable, he needs to zip it. He needs to be quiet and be mindful of the irresponsible statements like this that are coming out of his mouth. I don't give a damn what you bet. How you gonna bet? You don't know. You need to chill. You're a doctor. You're supposed to be more responsible than saying something like that. You really are.
I'm with both of you and then some. I'm especially with this point that you cannot give O.J. Simpson an excuse for his proven erratic behavior. And there was a lot of it beyond whether he did or didn't. And in this case, it's so irresponsible to plant seeds of doubt in the public's mind from this doctor, and I have a lot of respect for him because he did a lot of good. But this has gone a little over the edge to plant seeds of doubt that, well, maybe O.J., maybe he just couldn't help himself for all of his erratic behavior because he had CTE, according to this doctor who's going to bet his whole credibility, his reputation, he's willing to bet from a distance without ever having even talked to O.J. Simpson. I did get to know O.J. fairly well, dealt with him quite a bit as a player and as a movie star. And for our younger viewers, I want to drive home what Stephen A. just said. This man was a movie star. Now, we're talking Towering Inferno, Cassandra Crossing, TV movies of the week, one called The Killing Affair, as he was making it with Elizabeth Montgomery. I spent a whole week with O.J. He was known on set as One Take Simpson. That's how sharp he was. Just let him see his lines one time, he'll nail them every time. As sharp an individual as I was ever around. Charisma, right there with Magic Johnson's. He was the biggest star in the National Football League that we now talk about is dominated by the quarterbacks, especially the white quarterback. Listen, through the 70s, it was O.J. Simpson dominated the landscape of pro sports to the point that, as Stephen A. said, he was the #1 pitch man. He was running through airports for Hertz. Go, O.J., go. Well, this guy, Again, would you have any symptoms, any flashes of CTE in your 30s? Maybe not. Maybe it would manifest itself later. So, who knows on that one. But that guy was as sharp a guy as I was ever around. Trust me on this. As sharp-minded a guy as I was ever around. So clearly at that point, he didn't seem like he had cauliflower brain from taking too many hits. And he was about as elusive a back, other than Barry Sanders, as we have ever seen. As you know, he was the first to go over 2,000 yards. And he never, it was hard to tag him. It was hard for a Ryan Clark to come up and get a good shot on O.J. He was just too quick and too elusive, okay? So I thought he came out of it pretty well, actually, all things considered. And in the end, I was very disappointed in this because it's the leaps that were taken in the script of the movie. And I told Molly this is my problem with the movie. There were a number of players, real-life players, who were prominent in this movie because, according to the script, CTE caused their suicides or their deaths in general. Mm-hmm. And then I look at their backgrounds. Let's start with Mike Webster, that you know from Pittsburgh fame. Great player, obviously. And beyond CTE, this is a man who was a victim of child abuse. He had 2 alcoholic parents. He had mental illness running through both sides of the family. Uncle committed suicide. Mom had a nervous breakdown. All 4 siblings were bipolar. I can go on and on and on. Suicide attempts all through the family. So was CTE the final straw, or was it the straw? Well, it's hard to know for sure. Do you see what I mean? So again, I don't doubt any CTE here, but in every case, they all had issues either beyond or you can argue because of CTE, but they already had issues in place in their lives that weren't maybe CTE caused. So again, that's why that was my only issue with the movie. You're leaping to some conclusions about what CTE can do. And I've known a lot of ex-players. I don't know any CTE victims, and I'm sitting next to as high collision of football player as I ever saw, Ryan Clark, and you're doing okay, man. You're doing okay.
I think you definitely don't want to say that people don't suffer from it. Yep. Because we know they do.
Mm-hmm. They do. I got it.
But I still feel like in this case, is very irresponsible on his part. And I'm a former player. Yeah. And like Skip said, I played it a certain way. And I'm very interested to know, how can we help it? How can we combat it? What are the symptoms? I study these things, but to say this and to put it on OJ and to give him this excuse and to give the world the opportunity to look at former players and current players a certain way, it's not right, it's irresponsible, and I have just a huge issue with it.
Hey everybody, Kevin Flynn here. On this week's Over the Ball podcast, I talk to ESPN FC's Ali Moreno, New York Times best-selling author Chester Elton, and I check in with our stat guru, Paul Carr. Get us by tapping on the Listen tab on the ESPN app.
In the nation's capital, the Washington Redskins have a big decision to make on the future of RG3, and it may not be the slam dunk that we originally thought. On March 9th, RG3's $16 million contract becomes fully guaranteed, and Redskins GM Scott McCloughan says there is certainly a scenario where we see RG3 back in Washington next season. Stephen A., what do you read into this?
Well, what I read into it, other than the fact that the Redskins just seem a bit slow to the party, is the fact that they have not really locked up Kirk Cousins. Obviously, both he and Colt McCoy are scheduled to be free agents. With the year that Kirk Cousins had this year, he's clearly your long-term guy. RG3 did not get a snap last year. They literally sat him on the bench in street clothes strictly to make sure he wouldn't get hurt, so they wouldn't have to pay him the $16.155 million that they would have had to pay him had he gotten injured on a football field this year. So even though we understand that from a business perspective, that's an embarrassing situation for a former starting quarterback to be in, where you have to come to work every day, where you are on the sidelines in street clothes, but you're healthy enough to play. They just don't want you to play because they don't want to risk any injury to you, because they don't want you to get hurt, because they don't want to have to pay you. Those are the conditions under which RG3 was subjected to from week 1 through week 16. There seemed to be no sensitivity to him whatsoever. I don't think any of us will ever get over what we saw Jay Gruden do to him in terms of highlighting and dissecting specifically his deficiencies, highlighting what he did in the 3-step drop, the 4-step drop, and his read, his progressions, and what he wasn't doing. We've never heard a head coach dissect a quarterback. I mean, it was so bad what Jay Gruden did to RG3. It was worse than Bill Parcells, Skip Bayless, talking about Terry Glenn years ago when they asked him about the wide receiver, and Parcells said, she's okay. She's okay. She's okay. That's what he said. It was as bad and disrespectful as that was. At least that's just a comment and you're done. Jay Gruden said what he said, then benched RG3 and benched him for the whole year, and no one let him go home. He still had to be there, even though he knew he wasn't going to even be allowed to address because they didn't want him to play. Now you're saying, oh, well, if we don't get to re-sign Kirk Cousins and Colt McCoy, then at least we still have RG3 under contract. Let's be clear. They're going to let him go. They should let him go. But this still doesn't negate the fact that it's a level of disrespect that they're showing to him because you've already made it clear that you don't want him. You've already made it clear who you do want. What you're what you're doing to RG3 is using him as a negotiating tool to let Kirk Cousins know you don't get to sit there and bleed us and hemorrhage us for dollars, because if you do, we could always go the direction of RG3 when everybody and their grandmother knows that era is over in the nation's capital. So they need to stop it. They need to stop that nonsense. They just need to let it go and show this man, if RG3 is still a good player and he's such a good person like they say he is, how about showing him the respect of not using him as a negotiating prop to make sure you don't have to pay Kirk Cousins? Just get rid of RG3, let him go, let him out of his misery.
I'm with you on that. It could be bargaining leverage with Kirk Cousins' representative. It could also be trying to create a little bit of trade leverage on the open market for RG3 if, in fact, you could, if anybody would give anything to trade for him, and they might. But to me, it's just like Johnny Manziel. It's America's team syndrome operating here. The Dallas Cowboys are still such a force, even though they had a miserable year. They've had a miserable 2 decades, but when people hear that Johnny's going to Dallas or Robert's going to Dallas, I just think it shakes up their front offices, and they start to think, wow, maybe we should think about this. Should we really just cut them loose and let Johnny wind up a star in Dallas, or Robert wind up finding himself in Dallas? And it's hard, because I'm pretty sure the owner in Washington still loves himself some Robert Griffin III. I'm talking about, obviously, Dan Snyder. And so it's hard to cut bait. And I don't know if Dan Snyder is influencing a fairly new GM and Scott McCloughan, but I'm with you. To me, Jay Gruden, who I'm pretty sure is going to be the head coach going forward, I think he burned his bridge to the ground with Robert Griffin III. And I'm with you. I want to see Robert get a fresh start. I've been troubled by his performances, obviously, in Washington. I can't defend them. He looks like a shell of himself. He almost looked like at times, not this year because he didn't get a chance, but 2 years ago, it almost looked like he forgot how to play quarterback at times. And I think he'll remember if he gets a fresh start elsewhere.
Saturday night on ESPN, it'll be the Golden State Invitational Consolation Game between the San Antonio Spurs and the Cleveland Cavaliers. On January 18th, the Cavs lost by 34 points to Golden State. 1 week later, Golden State beat the Spurs by 30 points. Stephen A., who wins the consolation game?
You know what? It's going to be interesting. I would, if I had to bet my money on anybody, if Tim Duncan plays, you're thinking the Spurs. If he doesn't, it's the Cavs. I'm going to go with the Cavs because I don't know if they're going to lose 2 Saturday nights in a row. I think they're going to push the ball up tempo. I think that LeBron James is going to have a big night after the dud that they put forth in Tyronn Lue's first game on ABC last Saturday night. And by the way, Skip, I love the whole Saturday night thing. It felt real good to see a game on Saturday night on network television. I love that idea by our family, so I'm real proud of that. But I just think that Tyronn Lue wanting to push the ball up tempo, wanting to get after it. San Antonio clearly is the better team, but I think this is the kind of game that Cleveland could get up for, and I think this is the kind of game they could ultimately win if they're hitting their perimeter shots, which I think will transpire in this game. As an aside, don't be surprised if you see a Popovich, and I certainly don't want to call it theatrics, but I think that he'll do something. He'll say something to come to the defense of LeBron James in certain respects with all the heat that he's taken, because great NBA guys have an affection for the greatness of LeBron James because of the team concept he adopts, the team player that he is, and none of them like the heat that LeBron James personally has been taken in terms of him not being a team guy. To see even Pat Riley come out in his defense should tell you that. So I think all of these things are going to contribute to the kind of environment we see Saturday night, and I think Cleveland will probably end out on top because of it.
You could be right, but I am sticking with my San Antonio Spurs. And I must admit, after the psychological devastation that was losing by 30 at Golden State, I'm getting back on the bandwagon. I'm picking myself back up off the floor and saying, timeout. They are still the Spurs. I think they're going to be okay, and I still give them a shot, even a long shot, of beating Golden State in this year's playoffs. And the reason why they did bounce back at home the other night, as we talked about, they won by 31. And the key to the game for me was, remember, one reason they're being so careful with Tim Duncan's knees right now, extra careful, is because Pop is fire testing LaMarcus Aldridge as the future, the man of the future. And he's trying to say, let's fire test him on bigger stages than he's ever been on when he was a Portland Trailblazer and see how he fares. And he was embarrassed at Golden State. What do you have, 5 points in 25 minutes?
5 points on 4 shot attempts.
Yeah, 2 of 9. That's what I got, 2 of 9. But whatever. The point is he bounced back with 25 and 10 rebounds against Dwight Howard and company the other night at home. And I think he's going to bounce back again against LeBron. I think that Ty Lue will want them to push the pace against the Spurs, try to make it a faster game. I think both teams could get up into the hundreds barely. And I think my Spurs are deep enough and good enough to win. I'm going to go 105-100 because there's one advantage.
What?
Cavs have to play at Detroit tonight. That ain't easy because Detroit is coming. So I think it'll take just enough out of them that it'll be hard for them to get back up at home tomorrow night.
Entirely possible, I give you that. And LaMarcus Aldridge, keep in mind that the very next game, went up against Houston, had 25 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists. LaMarcus Aldridge needs to remember that he's one hell of a player. He's a very, very gifted guy. The only thing that he has to do is gravitate to the big stage. Being in San Antonio, the stage is going to get bigger. The lights are going to get brighter. And ABC on Saturday night, that even though LaMarcus Aldridge has played in the playoffs sometimes before and he's put up some digits, the reality is it's a bigger stage now. And the more he gravitates towards feeling the need to elevate his level of play in spotlights like this, the better he will be for the postseason because he is gifted.
So the Pro Bowl is Sunday night. Stephen A., you've now been in Cleveland, Philly, New York, Bristol, Charlotte, L.A. this week, if I'm keeping track properly. So you're going to be in L.A. Sunday night. Are you going to watch the Pro Bowl, or are there other things for you to do?
Well, first of all, I'm not going to watch it because I have no interest in it whatsoever. Let me say this, Skip Bayless, for the first time Sunday night on radio, I'm the third guy. I'm doing color commentary for the Bulls-Clippers game for the first time ever in my career. Kevin Calabro, PJ Carlissimo, and me. So I won't make any mistakes because I got 2 pros covering me.
PJ, just call in sick.
No, he's going to do the talking.
You're out.
I'm going to go.
You don't even need a microphone,
I'm going to get PJ's water. Or I'm going to get his water, and I will speak when PJ Carlissimo gives me permission to speak. As it pertains to the Pro Bowl, hell no, I'm not watching it. It's a waste of time. I can't stand the Pro Bowl. Oh, please, they're not playing. Football players should not be playing. As much as these contracts ain't guaranteed, no way.
None of the
they shouldn't even play.
I am watching. I am dedicated to this show. I will be ready to talk about it on Monday. Yeah, I'll be the only one. I'll have to debate myself about
why don't they just play flag football and get it over with?
Yeah.
Flag football.
Appreciate you listening to the podcast. Catch First Take weekdays at 10 a.m. Eastern in the Rear at 1 p.m. Eastern on ESPN2. Have a great day.
The journey to the tourney brings us to Louisville for an ACC showdown. Where the 16th-ranked Cardinals face 11th-ranked Virginia. Coverage begins Saturday at 12:30 Eastern on ESPN Radio.